Hello, welcome back again. So again, this is Joe Bren. So today's I'll be continuing the discussion I've made in my previous video. So I'll be talking about our lesson 4.2 in the subject of readings in Philippine history. So last time I've talked about the taxation under the Americans, taxation under the Spanish time, taxation under the Commonwealth period. Uh, Now is I'm going to talk about, and I also just talk about the taxation under the Japanese, but it's not that detailed. So now let's continue our discussion. So let's talk about the fiscal policy from 1946 to present. So the impact of the war. So during this time, the impact of the war on the Philippines economy was effectively disparate. So we are struggling. The people are struggling. The government is struggling. Since we are affected, everybody is affected by the impact of the war, especially our agricultural based economy, our finances, our there's a lot of disruption during that time. So the United States, they came in and they declared the Philippines independent. But since we are affected by the war, as the country needed rehabilitation funds, our country is needs rehabilitation funds from the United States. So the dependency to the Americans was an opportunity to be taken advantage. The economic situation was very problematic. That by 1949, we are struggling. We are struggling for food. Agricultural based economy was also affected. Everybody is affected. So we need the help of other countries, especially the United States. So there was a severe lack of funds. So we struggling for money. We don't have money to rehabilitate our country. So there was a severe lack of funds in many aspect of governances, especially the military and the education sector. So the education system, they are affected. So unfortunately, no efforts were made to improve the tax collection, and the United States advised us to adopt direct taxation. So, what is direct taxation as advised by the United States? So, direct taxation, this is a tax given to given to a specific individual, just to support the need for financial support for the government. So, they are suggesting us to implement direct taxes. We need to collect money for the people to rehabilitate our country because of the war during that time. That's why war is a very difficult event in our lives, and war is never a solution to any problem. So the administration of President Manuel Rojas, the United States suggested that we need to adopt direct taxes. We need to collect money from the people, but the administration of President Manuel Rojas declined the proposal because for him it did not want to alienate its allies in Congress. So the impetus for economic growth came during the time of President Elpidio Quirino through the implementation of import and exchange control. So during the time of Elpidio Quirino, so the economy grow because of the implementation of the import and exchange control. So this policy allowed for the expansion of a viable manufacturing sector that reduced economic dependence on imports. So this policy allowed for a bigger scope, for a bigger chance of our economy to grow. So new tax measures were also passed, which included higher corporate tax rates that increased government revenues. So tax revenue in 1953 increased twofold compared to 1948, the year when Quirino first assumed presidency. So by the time President Elpidio Quirino assumed presidency, so there was an increase in tax revenue in from 1948 to 1953 because of the new tax measure that were also passed, that were implemented. So the higher corporate taxes, tax rates increased during his time. So while the succeeding presidencies of Magsaysay, Garcia, and Macapagal promised to study the tax structure and policy of the country. So they are trying to make good with our tax policy. So through the creation of a tax commission by means of Republic Act number 2211 to make a way for a more faster to a more robust and efficient tax collection scheme. So post-war fiscal policy remain regressive. When we talk about regressive, it remains less advanced, characterized by the overburdening of the lowest classes, while the landed elite who held business interests were in Congress to ensure that taxes would not be levied to them who belong to the higher classes of society. So again, you talk about tax burden, the lower class felt the overburdening of paying taxes, while the landed elite who were in Congress, they ensure that the taxes would not be put into them, belong to the higher class of society. So the period of the post-war republic taxes the period of the post-war republic saw a rise in corruption. So because of this, this saw a rise in corruption. So from 1959 to 1968, Congress did not pass any tax legislation despite important changes in the economy. So because there was a rise in corruption, because of this, so the Congress did not pass any tax legislation despite the need for despite important changes in the economy. The collection of taxes remained poor. Tax structure was still problematic, and much of public funds were lost to corruption, which left the government incapable of funding projects geared toward development. So it was very heartbreaking despite the a lot of new tax measure to ensure the the economic growth of the company. It was during this time it was still problematic. It was poor. There's a lot of funds were lost to corruption, and again the government are also struggling, incapable of funding projects geared toward developments. So the main purpose of paying taxes is for economic development, like the maintenance of the roads, the buildings, businesses, schools, a lot of things. So bridges. So that's the important. That's why we need to pay taxes. So that's the only way for the government to raise funds to support project for economic development. And that's very important. So if you are working, you need to pay taxes. You have your income tax return. If you're a businessman, you also need to pay that. So this is very important. And under the Marcos regime, authoritarian under the Marcos regime, the tax system remained regressive. So under the Marcos regime, the tax system remained less advanced. So during the latter part of the Marcos years, in 1981 to 1985, the tax system was still heavily dependent on indirect taxes, which made up 70% of total tax collection. So during the Marcos time, they are so dependent with indirect taxes. So what is indirect taxes? So during the Marcos time, the tax system was less advanced. It remained less advanced, and they are so dependent with indirect taxes. So compared to direct taxes, this is a tax given to individual or a specific person. While individual taxes, this is a tax given to a indirect taxes given to a consumer, like food, buying for food, part of the purchase price of good or service. So meaning if you are buying something, you need to pay this tax, the indirect taxes. So as Corazon Aquino took the government after the EDSA revolution, so she a major reform in the tax system introduced under the term of Aquino was the introduction of the value added tax. So I know you are all familiar with the value added tax. So I know you are all familiar with value added tax. So this is a major reform in the term of Corazon Aquino. So the VAT law was signed in 1986 and put to effect in 1988. So while it was a very reliable source of revenue for the government in general, so because of this tax reform, the value added tax, there was the tax audit, tax collection were intensified, the corruption, it was reduced, and the trust and confidence of the people in the BIR uh, improved during that time. So as a result of the tax reform of the Aquino administration, both tax and revenue effort rose, increasing from 10.7% in 1985 to 15.4% in 1992. So greater political stability during the administration of Fidel Ramos in 1992 allowed for continued economic growth. So after the term of Corazon Aquino, Fidel Ramos took over in 1992 and it allowed for continued economic growth. So the Ramos administration ventured into its own tax reform program in 1997 through the Comprehensive Tax Reform Program. So the succeeding term of President Joseph Estrada in 1998 was too short to contribute any change in the tax system. So then Vice President took over, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. So he took over. So as president, she undertook increased government without adjusting tax collection. So this resulted in a very large deficit from 2002 to 2004. Again, the government was struggling, so the government had to look for additional sources of revenue. And in 2005, they implemented the expanded value added tax, the EVAT, was signed into law. Republic Act 9337. So select professional services were also taxed. So in February 2006, the VAT tax rate was also increased from 10% to 12%. So as president of Benigno Aquino III succeeded President Arroyo in 2010, promised that no new taxes would be imposed and additional revenue have to come from adjusting existing taxes. So no new taxes to be imposed. So the administration, so what they did, the administration ventured into the adjustment of excise tax on liquor and cigarettes or the sin tax reform. So sin tax reform, according to research, so this is a tax collected especially for a product that is harmful for the body like alcohol, cigarettes. So they need to get tax from that products. So Republic Act 10351 was passed and government revenue from alcohol and tobacco excise tax increased. So the sin tax reform was an exemplar on how tax reform could impact social services as it allowed for the increase of the Department of Health budget, triple in 2015, and free health insurance premium for the poor people enrolled in PhilHealth increased from 55.2 million in 2012 to 515.4 million in 2015. So during the time of President Benigno Aquino, the Sen tax reform was very exemplar on how we could impact a lot of things because of the collection from these taxes. So the administration of the new President Rodrigo Duterte promised tax reform, particularly in income taxes as it vowed to lower income tax rates shouldered by working Filipinos. So former President Rodrigo Duterte promised to make some changes when it comes to tax reform because the aim is to lower the income tax shouldered by working Filipinos. So the proposal of tax reform also seeks to limit value-added tax exemption and increase excise taxes on petroleum products and automobile. It is hoped that reforms in the country's tax policy will result in the much desired economic development that will be felt even by the lowest classes and society. So again, taxation. There's a lot of our former presidents. They are trying to make a change, to do some changes when it comes to our tax reform, because our tax really helped a lot, especially in the implementation of projects to for the economy to grow, for our country to grow, agricultural based economy. So we need to pay our individual taxes. So they are aiming to make a change that this taxes is equal for everybody, so that everybody is paying for this for the development of our country. So there is still more to come with in regards to our taxation here in our Philippine economy. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are learning from all the videos that I've posted. I hope that you are still with me. You are still eager to watch and listen in all my discussions posted. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again for my next video blog. Thank you, and God bless you.